on GoSuffolkRams.com. From Boston, Massachusetts, welcome to Suffolk Sounds, the official show for Suffolk University Athletics. Hello and welcome. This is our first official Suffolk Sounds show. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cam Brennan. You can follow me on Twitter, Cam_Brennan1. That's CAM_BRENNAN1. That's how you can find me and interact with me on social media. As for the show today, we bring in the newest addition to the Suffolk Athletics staff, Suffolk men's soccer coach, Bill Maddock. I sat down with Coach Maddock today with a one-on-one interview, and here's what you can expect today from today's episode. We give you fan access that you never thought you'd get. We'll do having conversations with Coach Maddock and other coaches throughout the semester, and we'll get perspectives as the close ties to the Suffolk Athletic Department. Now, with that all being said, let me get back to Coach Maddock. Maddock brought his whistle to Suffolk sidelines from Babson, where he helped the Beavers to the NCAA tournament run over a year ago. Today, we're going to talk about his days before Ram Nation, his unique start with the squad that has been displaced due to COVID-19, and his overall love for the game. This interview starts now. Coach Maddock, welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast and great to have you as our first ever guest for Suffolk Sounds.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
Absolutely. Now, the first thing I want to touch on is you were welcome to the Rams Nation Athletic Department early in 2020, had a couple months maybe to assemble the coaching staff and talk to your players, and then all of a sudden the COVID-19 pandemic kind of puts a wrench into things and halted all collegiate sports in March. What's it been like in these unconventional times at Suffolk so far and for you as a new head coach?
Yeah, it's definitely been very different from what I'm used to. It's been a bit of a challenge, but it's been fun. You know, coming on board in the department in January and basically hitting the ground running for 6 straight weeks and trying to meet the current players, trying to bring in new players, trying to, like you said, assemble a staff, kind of lay that early foundation of what we're trying to build here. And then all of a sudden get the rug pulled out from under us in the middle of March. So, you know, I'm looking forward to get back to some normalcy. I still haven't run a session with the boys yet. You know, it's going to be fun to get back on the field soon. So, you know, like I said, it's been a challenge, but it's been fun. It gave me time to kind of reset and really think about what we want to do next.
Absolutely. And I have to ask too, because everyone had their own sort of a quarantine routine almost. What were some of the things that you maybe adapted, or maybe a lot of people learned new skills while in quarantine? A lot of people learned how to be cooks while in quarantine. What are some of the things that you maybe picked up on when we had this hiatus from March to maybe August of that time off?
I'll tell you what, we got sent home about March 13th, and you know, during quarantine, about 13 days later on the 26th, my wife and I had our second child. So we spent the last 5-6 months in quarantine with a 2.5-year-old and a newborn. So, you know, patience is definitely something that I learned and how to do some time management. You know, obviously did a lot of the cooking at home and, you know, trying to stay on top of things. So being a full-time dad and being a full-time coach at the same time in the same room was pretty unique. But it was time that I got with our boys that I never would have got because of COVID. So, you know, in that sense, you know, the timing for COVID, although it was never good, it was personally kind of a good experience for me just because we got that family time.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great takeaway from, if there is a takeaway from this quarantine period, is that we became closer together rather than separate for an elongated time. Now, you mentioned before about your maybe journey to the athletics department at Suffolk. You served as an assistant coach at Babson and had a couple different roles at Newberry College, including a NECC championship, rounding off before your departure from Newberry. But give us the start. Where did it all really start for your journey within the game itself and journey within the Suffolk?
Sure. You know, I think I can bring it all the way back to honestly middle school. You know, I was fortunate enough. I grew up in the South Shore. I grew up in Marshfield, but my family and I had an experience. We moved to London for 5 years during their childhood, and so I did middle school and first years of high school there. And you know, got to play in the youth system over there and at the club level. And you know, that's when, you know, I really kind of fell in love with the game. experiencing a different style, different coaching styles, different game styles. And as people know, right? And, I mean, soccer in England there's nothing bigger. So you kind of fall right into that environment. So, from the ground up, I think that's, kind of where it all started for me. And I was fortunate enough, I moved back, finished high school back in the States, and went on to play two sports in college. So I started at a Division II level, just outside of Boston, and then I ended up finishing school at Newbury, where I played baseball and soccer. Phenomenal experience. And the coaching career started soon after the playing career. I was fortunate enough where I graduated college in 2009. I was handing the reins as a head and men's and women's soccer coach at Fisher College in 2011. So I definitely took a unique avenue to where I am now, where a lot of the times you have to volunteer or you have to serve as an assistant for years. I was pretty fortunate enough where, at 23 years old, it's, hey, you're a head coach, go build a program. So I was a Fisher for 5 years until 2016. I loved my time there, loved the players there. But when your alma mater comes calling and they give you a chance to come back and coach the team that you played for and you wore the uniform for, it was an absolute no-brainer decision for me. So, spent 3 years at Newbury, 2016 to 2018, capped it off with our first ever NCAA champion, NCAA tournament appearance, in conference tournament. We're the only program or only sport in the school's history to do that. So that was an unfortunate way how it ended with the school closing, but it was a great way to cap off my experience there. And then, as you mentioned, I served in 2019 in the fall as an assistant at Babson. I'm forever thankful for what John Anderson and assistant coach Bill Lawler did for me, bringing me on staff, allowing me to get right into it and take my opinion right away. And I think that experience at Babson kind of led me to this position now here at Suffolk.
Absolutely. And I think you talked about a couple different ways how maybe where we go through and see, you talked about being a multi-sport athlete. And I think the conversation that has been had lately, and it's maybe a small percentage, is being a multi-sport athlete helps you in other sports as well, where there are these centric folks per se that are on the bandwagon of, you only got to play one sport, you have to focus solely on that sport. And it's showing more so down the line that playing multiple sports within college, high school, middle school actually is a benefit for those other sports as well, because you're able to develop other skills and other abilities that may not necessarily reside with that original sport. And would you agree with that statement per se?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a benefit to both. I'm involved in the club level a little bit, and I definitely encourage players to play a club sport year round, and because I think you're exposed to a good level of coaching, and playing a sport consistently and constantly throughout the year obviously only improves you. But I'm a huge proponent for multi-sport athletes at the middle school and high school and college level if you do it, because I think it eliminates the burnout factor. I was always one of those kids that if I was playing baseball in the fall, it just didn't feel right. It was soccer season, right? Or if I was playing soccer in the spring, like I said, it didn't feel right. It was baseball season, So I think that allowed me to continue and have a good career in athletics because I wasn't getting burnout. There was always something different, mentally, right? There was always kind of a change of pace. And then physically, the developing in the sports, I think they are transferable. It's not every position is transferable in the two games, but I was an outfielder for baseball and I was a center back for soccer. So, footwork and angles were very similar. I think it helped me develop as an overall athlete.
And being a center back yourself, you talked about, or something that center backs have to be good is they have to be organized and they have to organize their back line. And I definitely think Suffolk will have an organized back line when we get back to playing under your tutelage. But something I want to piggyback off of, you talked about your time in England. That was really your first big exposure to the soccer world. What was that, how you really got attached to the game or fall in love with the game maybe earlier in your career path before, or was it really that time spent in the founding of the sport in England where you really fell in love with the sport?
Well, I grew up playing the game. As a kid, you play it. Started playing at 3, 4 years old. Right, was playing town soccer with my friends and playing club soccer, playing the travel soccer leading up to the move to England. But um, in my early development, I think that was definitely beneficial. But just experiencing a culture that is so pro soccer, definitely enhanced kind of my love for the game. Nothing against the culture here in America, but you have the kind of the big four sports, and soccer, the MLS is definitely the little brother in the conversation, but it's the main focus of sport in England is soccer. So you're always kind of talking about it, you're always seeing it, you're always exposed to it. So I think mentally that it kind of enhanced my love for it. And obviously playing early as a kid, you fall in love with the sports that you play, but being able to see it on TV consistently and constantly and go to games and experience those atmospheres was tremendous.
Yeah, especially in England, it's 100 or 365 days. It's always soccer. It's always on the lips of
Yep.
everybody. It's always on the minds of everyone
Yep.
across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, before we get to your coaching accolades and your career as a coach, I want to take a step back and ask you, well, maybe a favorite moment of yours, whether it be on the baseball diamond at Newbury or the soccer field at Newbury. What was maybe your favorite moment as a player? Would it be a great tackle, a header that you won, or would it be winning a game against your conference rival? What was it in particular that stood out for you as maybe a favorite moment for you?
So, even though I'm a college baseball coach, or being college soccer coach, my favorite athletic experiences was on the baseball field. I was fortunate enough to be on the mound and earn the first win in program's history at Newbury for the baseball team. So my first year at Newbury, like I said, I transferred in, was the first year we had baseball. Um, very similar to my experience, we were under the tutelage of a young head coach who taught me a lot, just as on a baseball side of things, but how to be a coach. And he's moved on to the Division I level. He's Greg Sullivan over at the assistant at DC, and he's done a great job. But being on the mound for that first win, it was the pinnacle, right? We were a building program. We were low in numbers, right? We were just bare minimum. But I think it was to be on that mound. It showed that, hey, all that hard work paid off, right? And it meant so much to the current players on the roster. And so I can always look back on that experience and say, look, as we continue in my career, as I move on in the coaching ranks and I come to Suffolk, and our goal here is to kind of build a program, right? Take some of the past history of the success and take a lot of talent that's in the program now and get it to what we think it can get to, right? That next level. I'm going to look back at that playing experience and say, hey, we walked in and we lost games by a lot of runs, right? And we lost big numbers in soccer. We lost a lot in baseball, but I'm going to look and say, hey, we showed up every day, no matter what, and we continued to compete and we worked hard. And then boom, it happened for us, right? It took longer than what we expected, but eventually we got there. And honestly, that's kind of how I formed, my coaching philosophy. That experience has really developed, my philosophy going forward on the soccer side of things. But it's like, look, we want players that are going to understand it's going to take time to find success, but keep working hard and keep competing, because it will come if you do the right things.
Absolutely. And I agree with you with the spectrum of if you put in the time, you're going to be able to reap the benefits of that hard work. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's especially important with building a program, like you said before, how you have to start from maybe the bottom, maybe you're halfway up the ladder, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
start from somewhere, and the only direction moving is forward. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you more. So, and you said starting your first coaching job straight out of graduation was at Fisher College, and I have to imagine that's a pretty big shock, just walking on as your first year as head coach and having as much experience as maybe as the guys next to you on your staff. But I have to ask, what was maybe your philosophy? Was it shaped by your previous coaches that you were under? Was it shaped by your time on the field and how you see the game? Or was it something that you work around the players that you have and the squad that you have built around you to change your playing style?
Yeah. Looking back on it, the ability to coach two programs at once was so beneficial in my personal development. It was hard. Don't get me wrong. Like, everything was a double header, right? I was coaching the men's team, and we'd practice for 2 hours, and then I would immediately coach the women's team, or vice versa on the day. Or, games were double headers. So they were long, grueling days. And, at times, there was some mental strain, because if you're recruiting from the men's program, then you think in the back of your mind, hey, I'm taking away from the women's program, right? So I had to learn right away how to be very good at time management. I was fortunate enough where I was young, and very young, and I was energetic, and I was wide-eyed, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I had all the time in the world to kind of work and build on it. But, it was a complete rebuild, right? And shock anybody, it's like I walked on the field the first day of practice, and men's and women's there were together for conditioning, and there was like 6 players on the field. As you know, right? It's like 2 teams don't equal 6, right? So it allowed me to develop a philosophy where it was very player centered and player focused. And right away, it was, the message to the players was, hey, this program is as much as yours as it is mine, right? We're not going to be successful if I'm the only one working hard, right? Or if I'm being lazy as a coach and your players are working hard, we're not going to be successful. So, the players, the small number of players, that initial core players, really bought into that message early. And that led to some decent success, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And, that's how kind of the initial coaching philosophy started, was like, look, we're going to do this together. This is, you hear coaches say all the time, this is a we, not me. But, that was it. This was our program, right? Nobody was bigger than the program. The coaches weren't bigger than the program. The players weren't bigger than the program. Everybody had to be doing the right thing to be successful. And, we took a men's and women's team, like I said, that had combined 6 players. And when I left there, both the teams were in the playoffs with double-digit wins. And that doesn't happen without the hard work of our assistant coaches, our players, all the support staff. If we weren't all doing it together, there's no way that happens.
Absolutely. And I have to imagine that it was an amazing feeling seeing the results from all that hard work with the culmination of that championship for Newberry in 2018. Can you take us through where you got to the finish line and you were able to lift that trophy up and see how much the hard work does pay off?
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, honestly. So, it was funny enough, Newberry didn't have a home field, right? So, we weren't fortunate enough, like in Suffolk, where we've got a, long-term deal with East Boston, and we really truly have a home. So Newberry used 9 different home fields for their games in 2018. So we were the road warriors. But we had a talented group. We were fortunate enough. We brought in a big class that year. We brought in 16 kids, a couple of transfers, but we brought in a couple of junior college transfers that really changed the mindset of the younger guys, and we brought in a group of younger first-year guys that really wanted to compete. But they didn't mind that we went all over the city to play home games. So I say, funny enough, we actually played the championship game at Hormel Stadium, Medford, which was the same home field that we used at Fisher, right? So you want to talk about full circle. I left Fisher, left Hormel, and was still had connection with when Medford went back. And I obviously remember that game like it was yesterday. And as you said, it was a culmination of a lot of hard work. I knew we were talented early on. I knew we were talented in preseason. We went out and scrimmaged a lot of good teams, scrimmaged a couple of Division II teams, and competed right till the end of the minutes there. And I knew this group was different, right? I knew they're mentally different. So getting to that finish line and finishing in that job was an experience I'll never forget. And I'll never forget walking into the locker room and having the guys celebrating with the trophy and realizing what they've accomplished, that they were the first, and that nobody was going to be able to take it away from them, no matter what happened. Right? School closed 6 months later, but they still had that trophy. So it was phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it had to be nerve-wracking too. The winner coming in extra time, 1-0.
Yeah. It was a hard-fought game. Damon, the opposing coach, is a very good coach. Tactically, he threw something at us that we weren't expecting. So our guys had to take some time in the middle of the game to really, really focus and change their mindset, right? we'd play them early on in the season and, beat them in overtime. But they played a whole different system that they threw at us. They saved that one system that they're very good at, for the championship game. So it was a grind. It was intense, but it was one of those games that if your heart not pounding, then you shouldn't be there. You got to love that feeling of that competition. And one mistake is going to cost you the game, or one play is going to make you the game. And Albert is the first year guy from Worcester who didn't get many offers out of high school. Scored that game winner for us. And a couple weeks earlier, he hurt his foot. He broke his foot, missed 3 weeks. And, I told him, it's like, keep grinding. And people think I'm joking, but I'm like, hey, dude, you're going to score a big goal for us one of these days. And sure enough, he's the one who scores the winner, and the place goes crazy. But, that was one of those things as a coach. It's like, okay, yeah, I actually said something that actually came out to be true, which is awesome. But I'm really happy for that. Even though he was injured and, he was kind of down, he came back and he was focused, and he came back to work hard and got himself back on the field. And his hard work was really rewarded for himself.
And I think it's something that you mentioned that's important maybe in any sport is the ability to be adaptable and be flexible. And I think in soccer especially that something may change, whether it be you're down 2 goals or up 2 goals, or a system that you are expecting is no longer there. How important do you feel that adaptability and flexibility is within the game itself, and being a coach, being able to adapt on the fly?
I mean, I think it's everything. I mean, tactically, it's kind of how we build our philosophy. We look for players, obviously we look for athletic players and smart players, but, soccer IQ is so important because, just like you said, you can go from game to game or situation to situation and play a different system and have to adapt on the fly. This game that we coach is completely unpredictable. You try to put your players in situations that you're familiar with and they know how to deal with. But like I said, you really can't control too much what the opponent does. So you just have to kind of control what you do, and hopefully it affects the opponent enough. So it's like, to kind of harp on it, it's like you have to be adaptable. You have to be understanding. You have to be, have a good soccer IQ and really understand, how to operate out there.
And I think we've touched on a couple of great moments that you've already mentioned through your career, but if you had to pick one, whether it be maybe your first win at Fisher, or lifting that championship trophy at Newberry, or being with the Babson staff, going to the NCAA tournament and having a great tournament run, what would be one of your highlights as an individual for your coaching career so far?
Oh, geez. I think, I don't know if I can honestly pick one. I mean, there's so many. I've been fortunate enough, right? I've been doing this for a while, but I haven't been doing it for that long. But there's been so many great moments, right? It's like I look back how excited the women were when they won their first game at Fisher, right? They had won a handful of games ever, right? The current players in their roster never won a game before, never experienced success. So the jubilation in their faces when they actually won a game was phenomenal. Clinching a playoff berth for both the men and women for at Fisher was an experience like none other, right? It's like, we weren't supposed to be there, right? We weren't supposed to get to that level. We weren't supposed to be decent. At Newberry, my first year at Newberry, I took over a very good program. It was a team that came off a conference championship loss. They were good. They weren't great yet. My first 4 games, we won our first 4 games, and we ended up beating the 13th ranked team in the country. And a week into basically my coaching career at Newberry, I'm like, this is awesome. So he's there. You see that experience. And obviously winning the games at the conference championship games at Newberry, and then last year at Babson. I mean, it was all over social media. We won the conference tournament last year at Babson by Alex Crompton, one of our senior forwards, with a bicycle kick with 3 seconds left in double overtime. Are you kidding me? Like, that's not supposed to happen, And Alex was a forward who, tried to do bicycle kicks every day in practice. For 4 years, Coach Anderson used to tell me that. For 4 years, he tried to bike it, and he would never do it. And Anderson used to yell at him all the time, "Stop doing that! Stop doing that!" sure enough, 3 seconds left basically
Yep.
in his conference career, he bags the winner. It's unbelievable. So I think every one of those, and there's many more moments, right? And there's moments out there that if I talk to my former players, they would remember more than I, right? Because I think everybody that I've been around, has those specific moments. So I think I'd be doing everybody a disservice if I picked one particular one. Obviously being a head coach and winning the conference championship at your alma mater, I think that's pinnacle, right? That's what you want, and getting the opportunity to take players to the NCAA tournament is phenomenal. But yeah, there's been so many, and hopefully there's a lot more coming down the road.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there will be many in the blue and gold of Suffolk as well. But I have to ask you before we wrap this up, one final question. What is maybe the one thing you are excited for when we are able to play on the field again? You guys have practices coming up this fall in a week actually. And what's one of the more exciting things you're ready, whether it be to get all the guys together and run a session, whether it be that first game on the home field, or whether it be getting that first win as a group?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to finally get on the field. It's going to be fun to run a session with the boys and, kind of interact. And, the sessions are fun. Practices are fun, and they're high energy, and it's what we look for. We look for hard work, but, it's those individual conversations and the banter that you have with the players, right? The conversations. You remember the people, you don't always remember the games. So I'm looking forward to continue enhancing the relationship that we have with the current players, the new players, and the future players down the road. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to finally coaching a game. I thought when I got hired in January, it's okay. I've got 8 months to get ready, and now I've got 20 months basically to get ready, depending on what happens in the spring. So a lot of sitting around, getting antsy. I just want to get out there and compete. So looking forward to just getting on the field and help guide the current players on the program, and help them be successful. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely, Coach, and I can't wait to see that success from the players, from you, and the Suffolk men's soccer program as well. I appreciate you joining me today for the first show, and this has been a great experience so far to get to know you, and for Ram Nation to get a little insight on yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. It was awesome. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Ram Nation, if you like what you heard today in the inaugural Suffolk Sounds podcast, be sure to visit GoSuffolkRams.com. That's GoSufffolk.com, where you can find all that you need to know for Suffolk athletics. Well, that's about it. Be sure to follow the Rams on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at the same name for insider looks within the athletic department. Don't forget to subscribe, like, rate us, leave a review on whatever platform you are listening to the Suffolk Athletics official show. Send in your questions. Who would you like to hear from? A player? A coach? Be sure to bring something new to every show. In fact, be sure to tune into our next episode, where we'll be interviewing head men's baseball coach Anthony Del Preti for our next episode. Until then, I'm Cam Brennan, everybody. Talk to you soon, Ram Nation. Have a great one. This has been Suffolk Sounds. Don't forget to subscribe, like, rate, and review however you listen to your podcast.